Welcome to the WalterFootball.com podcast. This is episode 272. It's our 2020 NFL mock draft. April 1st editions are 4.0. Joined once again by Jacob Camenker. Jacob from NBC Sports Boston. Jacob, how are you?
I'm doing good today. You can actually see my face. It's light out right now. So I'm like basking in the glow of having good lighting right now. It's my number one dream come true.
I know, it's amazing to talk to you in the light. It's so weird. I don't know what to make of it. Also joined by Charlie Campbell, our senior NFL draft analyst at WalterFootball.com. I think bar none, the best NFL draft analyst out there. Charlie, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. You guys are both amazing grinders, so I'm just trying to keep up with you two.
Yeah, hard to believe that the NFL draft is in 22 days from now. So assuming it's going to still take place. So yeah, I mean, we might as well do an NFL mock draft with free agency done. So before we begin, I should say you can follow us at Walter Football or WalterFootball.com. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. That helps us out a lot. Or share this link with anyone. Also, if you're watching live right now on YouTube or Facebook Live, you can post your comments or questions. We want to just roll through this mock draft. So if you have any questions, we'll answer them at the end. All right. So we're going to start. So I went first the first time, then Jacob, and now Charlie's going to kick us off with the Bengals. Charlie, shock us all with this number one pick.
It's going to be the Bengals taking Jacob Eason. No, it's Joe Burrow, of course. The no-brainer number one going to be Zach Taylor and the Bengals franchise quarterback.
I thought you were going to say they're taking Jacob Camenker when you first said Jacob. But yeah, that's obvious. And this was obvious too. Chase Young is going to be taken by the Redskins. I've seen some talk about the Redskins trading down, but Charlie reported during the combine, or maybe it was a little bit before the combine, that the Redskins were in love with Chase Young and they don't want to move down. Charlie, do you want to just expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, they said it would take a lot for them to pass on him. You know, it would have to be a massive package for them to do that kind of trade, the kind that it doesn't seem like anyone's willing to give up, you know, with a whole bunch of number one picks and other premium assets. So the Redskins aren't just going to give the pick away, even though they have a lot of young talent on the defensive line. So they love him. They think they could have a legendary defensive line, adding him in, being strong up the middle and on the edge. So Ron Rivera is a defensive guy, so I think they just think he's too good to pass up.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so the NFL draft basically officially begins now. So Jacob, number 3.
Yeah, so I was actually going to have the Lions trade down with myself and the San Angeles Chargers, but I decided not to do that because I don't want to confuse myself too much. So I'm going to give the Lions Jeff Okudah with this pick from Ohio State. Simply put, they traded Darius Slay. They need to have a guy to complement Desmond Trufant, who they got on a solid deal. But if they add Okudah and have Trufant and then Justin Coleman playing the slot, that's a good corner trio, and I think Matt Patricia will appreciate that. Also could consider Isaiah Simmons because they have some linebacker holes and like versatility since Patricia comes from the Patriot system. But I think Okudah is the better player, the safer bet, and just feels more of a need after the Lions traded Darius Slay.
Yeah, and I think with the Giants on the clock at 4, they're going to go with Tristan Wirfs right now. I'm going to be digging in to try and get more, and we'll see in the weeks to come if we move off that one and go with someone else. But I think Wirfs really appeals to Dave Gettleman being kind of the old school offensive line guy that he has been during his career. I think Wirfs, the Iowa kid that can really run block, is athletic enough that you could consider moving him to left tackle and could play guard or right tackle, just appeals to Gettleman. And I think it makes sense, gives them, a better blocking for Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones. They can start Wirfs out at right tackle or guard, and then in a few years when they move on from Nate Solder, maybe move him to left tackle. So it makes sense for him to plug and play at one of those other spots and develop him and see how he comes along.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to any news you can share with us about the Giants pick, because they can go in so many directions. Number 5, the Dolphins are on the clock, and a lot of people are going to have Tua Tagovailoa going here. I'm hearing that Justin Herbert is someone that they like a little bit more right now. Then maybe things change once they have their meetings and stuff like that, and maybe once they get more medical reports. But I have a feeling that if the draft were to occur today, I think the Dolphins would take Justin Herbert over Tua Tagovailoa, but it is close.
Yeah, and I think that would be a dream scenario for the Chargers if this happened. It's also why I think the Chargers would be more likely to trade up at this point to get Tua, because they may like him a little bit more than the Dolphins do, just because the Dolphins like Herbert. So in this scenario, the Chargers will take Tua Tagovailoa. Anthony Lynn will get to do exactly what he wants, start Tyrod Taylor for a year for some reason, instead of going after Cam Newton or Jameis Winston, or maybe brings them in too. I don't know. But Tua can sit for a year, get that hip fully healthy, even though he says he's 100% now. Maybe he's progressing very, very well from that injury. So that's great news. And he could be the future of that franchise out there and give them the West Coast another Russell Wilson type. So Tua at number 6 to the Chargers.
And at number 7, I think the Panthers, this is a slam dunk with them taking Derek Brown, who across the league, a lot of teams feel is the consensus second best player in the draft, kind of an explosive strength defensive tackle along the lines of Ndamukong Suh. And Carolina's really weak at defensive tackle. They got absolutely gashed on the ground in the back half of the season last year. Gerald McCoy, Dontari Poe, Vernon Butler, all gone. They need help on the inside. K'Wan Short missed almost all of last year with an injury. So defensive tackle is a huge need, and Derek Brown's a phenom talent. So I think this is a slam dunk for the Panthers.
So the Cardinals are on the clock, number 8. We've had the Cardinals taking a tackle for a while, but they re-signed DJ Humphries and they also re-signed Marcus Gilbert, the 2 starting tackles. So I don't think they need to take a tackle here, even though there's some amazing tackles available in the top 10. So they can probably wait till the 2nd or 3rd round, I guess 3rd round now that they don't have the 2nd round pick, to take a tackle for the future to maybe replace Marcus Gilbert in a year or two. So they're in a position to take the best player available. Like they've already addressed their offense with getting Hopkins and re-signing the tackles. And now they can focus on the defense. And you could say the best player available is Isaiah Simmons. And the big problem the Cardinals had last year, besides their blocking, was defending the middle of the field. They really couldn't cover tight ends at all. It was just a nightmare every week. Just every tight end was killing them. Simmons would change that easily. Just having him in the middle of their defense would improve their stop unit a lot. So Cardinals take Isaiah Simmons number 8.
Yeah, the Jaguars will be a little bit bummed out about that because I had him as a top consideration at number 9, but I think they'll just reassess and go either offensive line or cornerback. I actually think C.J. Henderson might be the pick. Charlie, I know you've reported in recently this week that Henderson is working his way into potentially being a top 10 pick. I think with the Jaguars having such a big need at the cornerback position, I mean, their guys right now are Lions rejects, Rashawn Melvin and DJ Hayden. So not exactly great since I just had the Lions draft a number 1 quarterback or cornerback rather. So I think they'll go with Henderson here and like the Cardinals go for a tackle later in the draft. Since this class is so deep and in the 2nd round, the Jags should have a shot at a tackle. So CJ Henderson will go number 9 here.
And with the way this is working out, yeah, I think the Browns are another team that could be disappointed with Isaiah Simmons off the board, as they could use linebacker help. Joe Sherbert left in free agency, so that made them even thinner at the position. But with him off the board, I think they really just go offensive line, and there isn't much else to really consider, just their top-rated offensive linemen available. And I think that's most likely to be Jedrick Wills at this point. I think Mekhi Becton might offer a little more upside. Andrew Thomas might be a little bit more of the solid guy. But with them going back to more of the analytic approach, I think Wills will probably appeal to them a slightly more than Becton. So I'd have the Browns go with Jedrick Wills.
Yeah, so we're going back-to-back tackles here. Number 11, the Jets. They really need offensive line help. We saw Sam Darnold really struggle last year with some offensive line injuries. So they really need to make sure his protection is really good. And they can go Mekhi Becton or Andrew Thomas. Either one would be a great fit. I think Becton has more upside, so I guess I would have the Jets take Mekhi Becton at number 11.
Yeah, and the Raiders will benefit a little bit from the receivers, the top receivers of this really deep class dropping down the board here. They got an interesting choice, though, because they could go with Jerry Jeudy, who, for my money, is the best receiver in this class. But I actually think that they may prefer CeeDee Lamb. Lamb has a little bit more size as a contested catch type guy, and he has the makings of a number one receiver. He's a little bit DeAndre Hopkins-like in his skill set. I think that might appeal to John Gruden, though I could easily see him falling in love with Jerry Jeudy. Either way, I think this pick's going to be a receiver. I'm going to give the edge to Lamb. Even though I like Jeudy better as a prospect, I think Lamb might fit what the Raiders are looking for right now a little bit better.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Lamb's kind of fits that Gruden West Coast short reception, run after the catch kind of guy. And Jeudy can do some of that as well. He's just not as big. But Kyle Shanahan runs that a similar offense. And I think Jeudy, being the route runner that he is, could be a big play threat for the 49ers across from Deebo Samuel. And I could see the 49ers pulling the trigger on Jeudy here at 13. Their passing attack struggled down the stretch and in the playoffs. So Jeudy could help invigorate that and give Jimmy Garoppolo another weapon.
All right, number 14, the Buccaneers are on the clock, and I consider DeAndre Swift here. Maybe if all the tackles were gone, I think Swift would make a lot of sense. But they have one of the top tackles still available in Andrew Thomas, who was in consideration at number 11. So the Buccaneers, with Tom Brady now, he's going to be 43 in August. They need to make sure he's as well protected as possible, and they have a hole at right tackle because DeMar Dawson hit free agency. So I think they can just plug in Andrew Thomas and solidify the offensive line.
Yeah, I love that pick for Brady because everyone who's ever watched the Patriots play knows that Brady loves having a clean pocket and will thrive in a clean pocket. So Thomas of the Bucs is one of my favorite fits of the draft. I kind of hope it happens. But anyway, 15, I think another receiver comes off the board for the Broncos. Another receiver to complement Courtland Sutton. Henry Ruggs, he's a really great speed guy. He's a burner. I mean, we were all upset that he ran a sub 4.3 at the combine because he didn't run a sub 4.2. So that should tell you about everything you need to know about his speed. But he's also a good route runner. And, he can do some damage after too. So I think he could be a really, really nice complement to Courtland Sutton, who can also make some plays down the field. So I think Ruggs here will really upgrade that Denver offense and give Drew Lock another weapon heading into his second season.
Yeah, and I think Atlanta then with the way this has worked out is nice for them to have Javon Kinlaw fall into their lap at 16. Gives them a big body on the inside of their defensive line. They really could stand to get bigger and more physical on the defensive front. So you put Kinlaw on the inside next to Grady Jarrett. You also have Dante Fowler and Tack McKinley, and now you've given Raheem Morris a talented, athletic defensive line that has some more size and strength to it with the addition of Kinlaw.
So we're going to stay with the defensive line here. So the Cowboys on the clock, number 17. I have them taking Caleb Von Chase on. They lost Robert Quinn in free agency, so they need to replace this production. I think they also want to upgrade their secondary. But with Henderson off the board, I think they would love Henderson at 17, but he's long gone. So they can upgrade the defensive line and kind of help their secondary that way. So they can take the LSU pass rusher here.
Yeah, now the Dolphins come up for the second time with the 18th overall pick. And I was a little bit torn as to what to do here because they could go with DeAndre Swift. They need a big running back upgrade. They have Jordan Howard, who they added in free agency, but nothing else. But I'm actually going to go offensive tackle for them here just because there's a guy on the board who I think is better than the rest of the guys remaining. That's Austin Jackson from USC. He kind of started the year slowly, but got better as the year went along. There's a reason that he started slowly, though. He actually donated bone marrow in the middle of the summer to his sister, who's dealing with a rare genetic disease. So he donated bone marrow to her to help her get better, yet still didn't miss a game for the Trojans. So I think that's going to buy him some goodwill just because it looks like he's a great guy off the field. And as a blocker, he has a lot of upside. In a weaker tackle class, we could be talking about him as a top 15 pick. And given that the Dolphins currently have Julian Davenport and Jesse Davis listed as their tackle starters, I'm pretty sure they wouldn't be mad to land Austin Jackson here and maybe target either Swift or Jonathan Taylor with the 26th pick, because one of them is likely to be available there.
And with the Raiders' second pick coming right up here, I think they would take Kenneth Murray at this spot. I think that even though they signed a few guys in free agency at linebacker, Kenneth Murray really is a great fit in Paul Gunther's defense. They could move him around, play him at different spots. And Mike Mayock and John Gruden love guys that just love football and are passionate about football. Work hard, great football character, and that's Kenneth Murray. He's known at Oklahoma as a real team leader. He just is all ball 100% of the time, loves the game. And I think that kind of presence is what you saw them draft last year as well in the early rounds. So Kenneth Murray to the Raiders at 19.
Okay, so last time we went back-to-back defensive linemen. We're going to go back-to-back linebackers here. And Jacob, you said at 9, the Jaguars were upset that Isaiah Simmons was off the board, and I would agree. I think that would be a great pick for them. But they get to get Patrick Queen here at number 20. They really need linebacker help. They were just torn apart in that position last year. I know they signed Joe Sherbert in the offseason, and he'll help, but they really need help otherwise. Saw Miles Jack slow down last year. We don't know if that's going to be permanent. And then Telvin Smith has taken a hiatus from football. We don't know if that's going to be permanent or not. And if he, in the next 3 weeks, if he says he's coming back, that'll change his pick. But they really need linebacker help right now. So Queen makes a lot of sense to the Jaguars at 20.
Yeah, and that would definitely upgrade their back seven with those top 2 first-round picks. So for the Eagles here at 21, I think it's pretty clear. They upgraded their secondary, their cornerback position with Darius Slay via trade from the Lions. They have a massive hole at the receiver position. They need someone who could be a potential number 1 option. I like Justin Jefferson from LSU better than the rest of the guys out on the board. He's got great athletic ability. He's got a big body. He really could fit well in that offense and give Carson Wentz a downfield threat, but someone who can also catch some contested balls as well. So I think Justin Jefferson at 21 is a good value for the Eagles.
Yeah, I agree. And I think another thing that's helping Jefferson is the LSU staff is raving about him across the league for being just a great practice player, a guy that plays really hard in practice and challenges his teammates to get better. And I think without the pre-draft interviews, the safer guys are going to rise when teams can't bring people into their teams. I think the guys that teams view as safer in the character front are going to get a boost out of this. So I could see Jefferson being, definitely getting that, because I've heard from teams that LSU just raves about him. So the Vikings at 22, this is an interesting pick. Now that they have 2 first-rounders, they need secondary help. They need offensive line. You can't rule out defensive line after some attrition there as well. So they have a lot of directions they could go, but I'm going to have them go with Josh Jones, the offensive tackle from Houston, improve the protection for Kirk Cousins, help them to get more out of Dalvin Cook. So I think, after Austin Jackson and Josh Jones, there's a pretty big drop off. So looking to when they pick next in the second round, I think the Vikings might not like the offensive line options as much there. So I have them taking Josh Jones here at 22.
And Kenny says Jefferson for president, so he gives the stamp of approval there to Jacob's pick. All right, number 23, the New England Patriots are on the clock. I'll kind of be surprised if they make this pick at the spot. They don't have a second-round pick because of the Mohamed Sanu trade, so I think they're going to trade down and maybe take the quarterback they want in the second round, maybe in the 35 to 45 range. But if they stay here and they can't move down, I think it makes a lot of sense to go best player available. And one of those, someone you could say is the best player available is someone who can maybe take over as a starter. I think he's going to play at least half the snaps this year and then take over as a starter in 2021 and beyond. That's David McKinney, the safety from Alabama. I think he fits everything that Bill Belichick wants from a defender. He's so versatile. He can do everything for them. And plus, it doesn't hurt that Nick Saban and Bill Belichick are friends. So I think that'll help a lot. So I love the McKinney fit for the Patriots.
Yeah, McKinney's definitely a good fit for them. Could see them doing that as well, but I do expect them to trade down, like you said. Just they love those day 2 picks, man. It's their favorite thing in the world. But anyway, on to the New Orleans Saints. They were really hoping that Patrick Queen was going to still be on the board here, or at least I was hoping that he'd still be on the board here for them, for their sake. But with him gone, I'm going to go with the receiver. They signed Emmanuel Sanders this offseason. He should be a great number 2 option for Michael Thomas, or across from Michael Thomas, rather. But you can never have too many weapons around Drew Brees and Taysom Hill, who they view as their future quarterback. So I'm going to go with Laviska Shenault here. I think he's one of the better receivers left. He's a pretty good route runner. Before the season, there was some thought that he could be a first-round pick, or not a first-round pick, a top 10 pick. I was looking at some of your archived mocks the other day, Walt, because you tweeted at Woody Page about them, and I happened to see them. But Shenault just fits what the Saints need, and I think he'd be a great third receiver for them this year who can eventually take over in a bigger role from Sanders.
Now up, Vikings again. So they're, like we said, they have a lot of directions they can go. They already addressed offensive line. So I think the secondary is where they're going to go next. And obviously that's been a big inclination for Zimmer and their front office over recent years. But between age and attrition and some guys just not playing that well, you have Rhodes, Mackenzie Alexander, and Trey Waynes all out the door this year. So here I have them taking Christian Fulton. I think from size, speed, cover ability, he's kind of what they like to take in a cornerback. So I could also see Trayvon Diggs, AJ Terrell being considered in that, but I think Fulton might just be the kind of scheme fit they're looking for.
All right, number 26, Miami. We have this comment here from John Jingleheimer. He says, DeAndre Swift to the Dolphins. I think that's a great fit. They haven't addressed the running back situation yet. I could actually see them doing so at 18, but it actually makes sense what Jacob said, addressing the offensive tackle first, because I would say there are 2 running backs who will be chosen in the first round in all likelihood, maybe a third even if one of the teams like some of the other guys. So the Dolphins can get the running back at 26. They don't really have to reach for one at 18. So DeAndre Swift is my top rated running back, even though Jonathan Taylor tested better at the combine. So Dolphins take Swift. And Jacob, I'm glad you enjoyed the archive mock drafts. I'm almost positive Woody Page did as well. Just ignoring for a second that he called me a dank mushroom who lives in darkness, which I wrote about in my book.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite stories, just because you didn't even mention your site by name. It's just one so-called draft analyst had these however many picks over the course of 7 months. It was dude, why did you list these guys? And I believe me, I actually like Woody Page's writing, and I watched him on Around the Horn when I was a kid. He was one of my favorites. So, but just that story makes me laugh every single time. For more on that, check out Walt's book. It's really good. I promise you.
Thanks.
You will not regret reading that. This is also my way of stalling because the Seahawks are on the clock. I have no idea what the Seahawks are going to do. I never know what the Seahawks are going to do. They're more likely to take some random guy from that we're expecting to go in the 4th round and be yeah, this is our guy. Because that's what always seems to happen. So I can't predict who that's going to be. I do like Walt in your mock. You have them taking Jeremy Chin from Southern Illinois, but I'm also not going to have them take him because I don't know quite enough about Jeremy Chin to mock him in the first round yet. I will go with Yetur Gross-Matos from Penn State. They need defensive end help. It's not clear if Jadeveon Clowney's coming back yet. And even if he does, they need someone across from him. They signed Bruce Irvin to bring him back to Seattle. They drafted LJ Collier last year in the first round, but you can never have enough good talented pass rushers. And if Jadeveon Clowney doesn't come back, then it's a really big need for them.
And with the Ravens up at 28, I have them taking Jonathan Taylor, the running back from Wisconsin. Give them another dynamic offensive weapon, a back to pair with Mark Ingram. But, Mark Ingram, he's got some mileage on those legs. He's been in the league quite a long time now. So I think it would make sense for them to add another running back to keep Ingram healthy, keep him fresh for the postseason and late in the year. So getting a young back to pair with them and a back that brings the size of Taylor, but also his speed. And they want to have that fast offense, and Taylor brings that too. So I think Taylor to the Ravens makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so the Titans are on the clock at 29. So we can all speculate on team needs, and it's sometimes easy to do so, but other times you don't really know what teams want to do. But I think a good way to gauge what teams think they need to address is look at what they try to do in free agency, like talk about the players they talk to or the players they're interested in, but they don't address that position. I think that applies to the Titans. They've talked to some edge rushers this offseason. They really haven't brought anyone in. In fact, I think there was a story yesterday that said that they're talking to Jadeveon Clowney about maybe coming in. So if they don't get Clowney in the next 3 weeks, and they don't think they can, I think they go edge rusher because they really need to address that position with Cameron Wake gone. So AJ Epinesa is my pick for Tennessee. He's the best edge rusher still on the board, and he fits a huge need for them, as we know based on what they've done this offseason.
Yeah, now the Packers are on the clock at number 30, and I think they have a pretty clear need at receiver. We saw them talk to some receiving options this offseason. They did sign one, Devin Funchess, going to give him another shot. I actually don't mind Funchess as a player, but if you have him as your number 2 wideout, you're probably in trouble if you're trying to compete for a Super Bowl. So I think that the Packers will look at the receivers available, focus on a couple Big 12 guys. Jalen Reagor and Denzel Mims are the guys that I think would be the best players on the board. And I'm actually going to go with Mims here. I think that his performance at the Combine and just going back and watching how he did during the season, he looks like he could be like a really, really great number 1 receiving option at the next level. At the very least, he's got a big body and great athleticism, and he can make a lot of catches. He needs to work on his separation skills, but I think that his athletic ability is enough to get him drafted here. And I'm a little bit down on Reagor, even though I considered him here. So I'll go with Mims and a bit of an upset pick there.
And with the 49ers' second first-round pick, I think here, looking at who's available, I could see them going with a cornerback and Trayvon Diggs. Get a young understudy for Richard Sherman, a guy to help upgrade the secondary with Sherman still there, but in time, with some development, he could take on he could become a number 1 corner, as he has excellent size and speed. But there's some rawness and developmental work that he needs, and I think a guy like Sherman to help mentor him would be ideal for him. So Diggs to the 49ers at 31.
Yeah, so we're going to close this out with the Chiefs also going with the cornerback. This pick reminds me a lot of the Marcus Peters pick they made a few years ago. Damon Arnett he's a first-round talent, but he may slip out of the first round because of some character issues. But the Chiefs, with Andy Reid, they've shown that they're willing to take chances on these guys. I think Andy Reid will see the talent in Arnett, and I think he'll want to fill a huge need at corner. So I think Arnett makes a lot of sense for them at 32. So our first round is done, but we're still going to do 5 more picks because there are 5 teams still left. They don't have a first round pick because of trades. Those are the Colts, Texans, Bears, Steelers, and Bills in that order. So we're going to keep going with these next 5 selections.
Yeah, so the Colts would be on the clock around the 34th pick. The Colts don't have a ton of glaring needs. In this mock, they can go with Reagor, who I was just talking about as an option for the Packers. But I think if the draft falls like this, or if Jordan Love makes it to the end of the first round, they may trade up and get him just because he has sky-high potential, but he needs time to develop at the next level. He's got to learn how to read the field in order to be an effective quarterback. at the next level. They have Phillip Rivers under contract for 1 year, and they have Jacoby Brissett. So Love would not have to play as a rookie, could really work off the field, see what they can do there. So I really like Jordan Love as a fit for the Colts, whether at 34 or whether they're trading up into the end of the first round, just to be sure they get him on a 5th-year option. So I'll go Jordan Love there.
Now with the Texans, with the pick they have from the DeAndre Hopkins trade with Arizona, they have a lot of directions they could go with this pick, and I'm not even sure this guy's going to necessarily be there, but it's possible. So I'll have them go with Zach Bond, the linebacker from Wisconsin. And the reason is they got to get some young pass rush. I think with the age of J.J. Watt, the injuries he's had over the last 4 years, Whitney Merciless, he's no spring chicken either. He's had injuries. And with Clowney gone, they really are going to need another young pass rusher to help step up. And also to contribute quickly if they have an injury to one of those guys again, which is very possible. And Bond's a great fit in a 3-4. He's also really good in coverage, tough run defender. So I can see the Texans in their scheme really liking him as a plug-and-play contributor.
Okay, Chicago's on the clock at 43. I actually have two second-round picks at 43 and 50. We're going to do 43. So I think a tackle makes a lot of sense for them. A big problem for them last year was a major reason for their regression was that their offensive line wasn't nearly as good as it was in 2018. So Kyle Long getting injured was a big deal, but they also had injury. They also had regression at both tackles. So I think they need to take a tackle some point in the first 2 days of the draft. Maybe they trade up into the end of the first round. But if they stay at 43, I think someone who makes sense for them is Isaiah Wilson, the tackle from Georgia. They really need help on the offensive line, and there are several tackles they can take. Just Wilson really stands out to me.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to be unpopular here with what I give the Steelers, given what we're seeing in the comments of getting requests back or offensive line. I am sticking on offense. If that makes you feel better, but I am going with a quarterback. I think the Steelers are planning on drafting a potential successor to Ben Roethlisberger unless they decide to sign Cam Newton or Jameis Winston ahead of the draft. They need a young quarterback. Jacob Eason is on the board. He has a cannon of an arm. He's another guy who, like Love, could use some development. So I think that they could see a lot in Eason. He's like 6'6". He just looks like a prototypical passer. Again, he'll need time to develop. He did it for 2 years in college. 2 years were 2016 and 2019. He went to Jake Fromm at Georgia. So that ended up derailing his career there because he couldn't get on the field and had to transfer. But I like him as a developmental backup for the Steelers. Surely they have other needs they could address, but I think that if they get a quarterback of the future, it would make sense because the rest of their team is pretty solid. And also if they take Eason, it would set up the Patriots to land Jake Fromm, which is what I'm going to speak into existence this month.
Well, and the Bills in the second round, they really don't have a lot of needs. They have a strong roster, so they could have the luxury of going with best player available. But with that being the case, I do think defensive line is always going to be something that Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane are going to give heavy consideration to, especially when you consider the age on Jerry Hughes. Can never have enough depth up there. So I could see them taking a player like Marlon Davidson from Auburn, a guy that can play end and tackle, that you can move around. He's that hard-nosed, high-effort, blue-collar kind of a player that I could see McDermott really liking and being a fit for them to do multiple things with and kind of provide some depth at a few spots. So and rotational talent as well. So I'm going to have the Bills go with Marlon Davidson.
Awesome. So, yeah, that's our 2020 NFL mock draft. We had a couple questions, I believe. All right, let's see. So Spy Nick Danger says, Chris Sims is a close friend of Kyle Shanahan, and Sims just left Jerry Jeudy off his top 5 receivers in the draft. Does this affect the 49ers drafting Jeudy as their highest pick? Jacob, then Charlie.
Yeah, I think this will have approximately zero impact. Chris Sims is a great analyst, but sometimes he just has rankings that are off. We've seen him put Tom Brady lower than he probably should have in some of those quarterback rankings. So I think that it won't really impact what Shanahan is planning on doing there, especially since Jeudy just seems like the perfect type of fit as a replacement for Emmanuel Sanders, who really upgraded their offense.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that'll have an effect. And in some ways, the smoke meter is going off a little for me here. And maybe it's, kind of a bit of subversion to try and get Jeudy off of the radar for teams around the league as a potential 49er. As, I have heard that as well about Chris Sims and Kyle Shanahan being close as well. So, that wouldn't surprise me if they do try and kind of push the Jeudy to 49ers is not happening out there to try and, help them to make sure he's there or improve the chances of having him as an option.
Yeah, I think that, there could be a connection here. I do think Charlie is. I think Charlie's scenario is more likely where this could be smoke, and the Chris Sims is trying to get Jeudy to the 49ers in some way. Another option is that Chris Sims and Kyle Shanahan just don't agree on these prospect rankings. And Chris Sims, he played quarterback like in the NFL and college. Like he has his own opinions on these guys. So he could just feel strongly about Jeudy not being a good receiver, and this could have nothing to do with Kyle Shanahan at all. All right, we had another question. First safety taken, McKinney or Delpit, or maybe another safety too. Jacob and Charlie.
Yeah, I think it's looking like McKinney is going to be the first guy off the board. I like Delpit a lot, but just teams weren't impressed with his tape last season, and now it seems like he legitimately could fall out of the first round. So I think McKinney will go in the first round. I know we've talked a little bit about Jeremy Chin earlier from Southern Illinois. He's kind of a sleeper to go in the first round, which you have happening, Walt. I tilted my head the wrong way. I can't figure this out. This is embarrassing. There it is. Okay. But yeah, so I think McKinney will be off the board first, though, among safeties. I think Delpit's going to be like a day two steal, a little bit like his former teammate Greedy Williams when he looked like a first-round pick and then ended up with the Browns in the second round.
Yeah, I think McKinney's the favorite to be the first safety drafted, but as Walt kind of hinted, I think this is pretty fluid because I think Jeremy Chin's in the conversation with some teams. I also think the Lenore Ryan safety, Kyle Duger, is in the conversation with some teams as well. So remember last year, Darnell Savage kind of had a late rise and jumped up ahead of Jonathan Abram, who was kind of the consensus for safety for the majority of the draft process. So it wouldn't surprise me if one of these other guys has a late rise and goes ahead of McKinney, because McKinney, didn't run that well at the combine, and he's not the biggest of guys, but he has great tape and he's really versatile. So right now I'd go with McKinney, but I definitely think this is a fluid situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think it's a given that Delpit will be the second, third, maybe even fourth safety chosen. We have McKinney, we have Duger, we have some other guys, and I think Antoine Winfield is another guy from Minnesota. He could sneak ahead of Delpit or maybe even McKinney. I think you guys are right. I mean, this is definitely a fluid situation. So that I could definitely see like a chaotic order that no one really expects that we kind of saw last year, like you said, Charlie, with Savage. Kenny asks, curious of the dudes you currently have mocked in the top 12, which one is the most likely to drop significantly, maybe even out of the first round? So let me bring up the top 12 is scrolling right now. So which one is most likely to drop? Because I remember last year, the Florida tackle, Jawan Taylor, everyone thought he's going to go 9, and then he just plummeted.
I'm trying to pick up on who the 12 are. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough question because the COVID issue makes it a little harder to answer because we aren't having the combine medical recheck. You don't have the pre-draft visits where team doctors are looking at guys. So typically when you have one of the kind of consensus top dozen guys drop, it's because of the medical, or Laramie Tunsil, a video comes out with them smoking weed in a gas mask. So, with barring one of those, it's going to be tougher to see that happen this year. I think we saw it with Miles Jack, and as you said, Walt, with Jawan Taylor, where the late medical really sunk those guys down to day 2. So looking at that, that would be the thing I would look at for the top 12 guys, is if someone in there has a big medical issue. Obviously Tua does, but all the reports have been positive on him. And I'm not really sure there's the time or ability for a -1 to come out here and, in the final 22 days.
Yeah, that's true. They could have something from the combine that really hasn't been reported yet.
Yep, that's true for sure.
Yeah. So we really don't know. Obviously Becton is the biggest guy, so like maybe he's more susceptible to injury. Maybe teams are going to be concerned about his weight. So not knowing the medical, and I agree, Charlie. I think that's the big thing. Without knowing the medical, I think Becton is the most likely to slide. But I agree. I don't think any of these guys slide as of this moment.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you, Walt, that probably no one slides. But if someone were to slide, I think it would probably be in the Becton camp of, or maybe one of the receivers or tackles, because it's such a strong class for both of them this year. So maybe maybe people are concerned about Becton's weight. So Andrew Thomas goes in front of him, and then Becton slides a little bit. But I don't see any of these guys falling out of the first round, barring anything being reported that we don't know about.
Yeah, and a few other guys that in the first round conversation that we know have major medical. Kenneth Murray has some medical concerns with teams. I haven't heard it's that significant, but I do know there's some chatter there. Laviska Shenault obviously has major medical concerns around the league, and I heard the interviews at the combine weren't great either. So those, I think, outside of the kind of top 12, those would be some of the potential first rounders that could slide.
Yeah, Shenault was definitely on my radar. I didn't know about those interviews, so that's definitely another strike against him. So I think it could be possible to see, as we mentioned, maybe Grant Delpit falling to the second round, maybe Shenault falls as well. And once the first round's over, you're going to have, depending on which network you're watching, you're going to have Mel Kiper or not Mike Mayock anymore, Daniel Jeremiah, like shaking their head, like, I can't believe this guy fell. But it's going to be because of medical. It's going to be because of interviews. And like those two things are usually the stuff the public doesn't get to see. And then you find out later. And Charlie, something that you do after the draft is one of my favorite features that we do on the site is you do why the slide and why players are undrafted. I think it's always intriguing to see why those players are, fall. So we'll definitely, I guess we'll already have the answers for Shenault and Delpit, but I'm still looking forward to those.
Yeah, and it's really helpful. You learn a lot about the draft, for years to come, also based on how teams viewed guys in the draft that just happened. So definitely, I love getting those answers and providing them. So we'll have tons of why the slide and why undrafted articles going up here in less than a month.
Sounds good. So less than a month, like you said. So 22 days, a lot of preparation that we get to do for the NFL draft. And we'll have one more mock draft, maybe the week of the draft or the weekend before the draft. So definitely stay tuned to that. That's it for today. Jacob, anything you want to plug?
Yeah, I've got a mock draft dropping sometime this weekend on Rigo's Rag. My co-editor and myself are doing a GM mock draft where I draft for 16 teams and he drafts for 16 teams, alternating picks, sort of like a little bit what we do here. So that'll be up on Rico's Rag. And over at NBC Sports Boston, we'll be releasing our top 10 positional rankings for the draft. I'm working on some of them, including quarterbacks. I promise the quarterbacks mirror yours fairly closely, both of you. But I promise I'm not copycatting. I've done my homework. So be sure to check those out when they drop. I'll announce them on Twitter. So follow me at Jacob Camenker. Always talking football on there. And thanks everyone for watching, and stay healthy and safe.
Yeah, absolutely. You're definitely not like one of the NFL draft analysts out there who takes stuff who shall remain unnamed right now. Charlie, anything you want to plug?
Well, at Walter Football, the content is always fast and furious, 365, 24/7. So, but in the final weeks here before the draft, we're going to finish off the position review series. We got tons of scouting reports going up every day, more and more added in. Position rankings this weekend will have updated offensive one, skill position. So we're going to have tons of content coming up every day here over the final few weeks. And also, I'm going to be working a lot on getting rumors from teams, working the phone, working the texts, and really trying to kind of gauge, what teams are doing, also who might be getting shopped to be traded during the draft or before the draft. So we'll see what we get. You can't promise that, but I'm going to be working hard trying to get it. So we'll definitely have some, inside sourced information coming up on the site.
Yeah, like Charlie said, check out walterfootball.com for all the latest NFL draft content and plus some fantasy content that I'm going to be posting soon as well for updated free agency. Two things. One, usually we have our prospect visits tracker, which I love. Unfortunately, there are no visits taking place right now. However, there are virtual meetings taking place through FaceTime and whatnot. So I'm going to be tracking those starting tonight. I'm going to be trying to dig into them and seeing which prospects virtually meet with the teams, and that page is going to be updated. I would say within the next couple of days. Two, I am posting the 7th round of my mock draft. I kind of went nuts. Charlie and I, we always talk about how dreadful mocking the 7th round is. I underwent it. It was brutal, but I'm happy with the results. So I will share those on Thursday. And as always, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, or share walterfootball.com or this link. It'll help us out a lot. Otherwise, I will talk to you later.
All right.
Take care, everyone. Be healthy. Stay safe.
Absolutely. Bye.